Hi there guys, it's Niall here. Today I have a continuation of a video I made several months ago introducing the Sinclair ZX-81 computer to the channel. And if you haven't already, I do recommend checking that video out before you see this. It won't affect too much, but it will give you an idea of what the ZX-81 was all about, and I will link it down in the description below. But a common question I get asked by people is what these vintage computers can actually do. And unsurprisingly, nowadays the answer is not very much. But back in the day, these were the computers of the day that most people would have used. And the ZX-81 in particular is very special because of how cheaply made it was. It was designed to be as cheap as a computer could be so that people could afford them. And as a result, it did use basically the bare minimum it needed to be a computer. For example, not even having a proper keyboard. It had a membrane keyboard and no moving parts. So for this video, I'm going to look at what you could actually do with a ZX-81. One of the main uses of the ZX-81 was programming, as it came with a version of the BASIC language built into it. And this was one of the reasons it is so famous, because this was the first computer for a lot of people, and they obviously learned to code on it and then went on to write some of the software that we use today. And before I continue, I will apologise if you're seeing any streaks coming down the screen. That's because I'm filming using a real ZX-81 on an old CRT screen, and that does happen when you try to film a CRT because of the refresh rate on the screen. But anyway, as I mentioned in my last video, the BASIC was tokenized, meaning, for example, rather than typing out the full command, such as print, you would simply press P and print would appear. And this helped typing in code because, as you can see, the membrane keyboard was very slow and you had to really push down on the keys to get them to work. But this also meant that, for example, through the shift and the function options, you could have several functions attached to one key, which meant that the keyboard could be kept small, again keeping the prices down, that's what this computer was all about. However, it was limited in functionality by the fact that it only had 1K of memory, but you could purchase a RAM pack for 16K of memory, and that helped, meaning you could load larger programs in from tape and you could type in more programs. That was quite famous because of the RAM pack wobble, which meant because the connections were quite loose, sometimes it would fall out of place while you were typing and the computer would crash, which was especially annoying if you just typed in a very large program or waited several minutes for a file to load from tape. Another function of the ZX-81 that follows on from BASIC was calculations, and the ZX-81 has actually been referred to from time to time as an overpowered calculator, as it was very useful for maths. For example, it could run operations such as powers if you were to type in print, because you had to type in print first to tell it to display the answer, otherwise you'd just be giving it a sum and it wouldn't know what to do with that. If I wanted to do 10 squared, I would type in 10. Double times sign, because it can't represent it the way it's written, because of the way the display is. The Commodore 64, for example, was similar, but it used an upwards arrow to represent a power 2, and then it will calculate the answer. But the fact that it could be programmed, as I just demonstrated, meant that you could make programs such as a Fahrenheit to Celsius degrees converter, and that was one of the examples in the BASIC programming book. And that meant if you knew how to use it, it could be a very effective tool for maths, as it could save you a lot of time. Potentially the main selling point of the ZX-81 was its ability to load software from tapes, most often games, and companies like Xeon made many now infamous games such as Flight Simulation, or as I have here, this clone of Space Invaders called Space Raiders. Again, a drawback was that most of these programs required 16K of memory, but I believe most people would have brought the extension, as you couldn't really do a whole lot with 1K. And you also did need a cassette player, but most people would have had these back in the 80s. And you could load productivity software like VU File, which was basically a file sorting software. You could make invoices with it and you could sort through files on it. But the lack of a proper keyboard meant it wasn't really very good for professional use. And games were difficult, but you could, as you see here, play games on it. Although how hard you had to press the keys meant it was very hard to get a response sometimes. I'm just going to demo Space Invaders or Space Raiders on here. As you can see, the keyboard does make it fairly difficult. But that is one of the functions of the ZX-81, and that basically wraps it up for this video. So I'd like to thank you all very much for watching, and if you liked the video, which I hope you did, then please leave a like and a comment, and if you're new to the channel then consider subscribing, because I'm always putting new content out like this, and I do have more videos on the ZX-81 and the Commodore 64 planned. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.